Okay, I'm back today to tackle the second half of this floor. Hopefully it'll be a lot easier and a bit less frustrating than the first half because, obviously I never ripped up a floor before, so I had to spend many hours trying lots of different things, working out what techniques were actually going to work to be able to get that floor up. There was a lot of swearing and a lot of frustration involved in that. But now that I've got it figured out, hopefully I can do the same thing on this side and the floor will come up a lot more easily. Fingers crossed. So I've got all my tools ready to go. So I've got hammer, an old chisel, got my crowbar, my mains power quarter drill that's got the hole saw attached that I'll use to drill around the screws that I can't get out. And I've also got my cordless drill with the screwdriver attached so that if there are any screws that aren't too badly rusted, and I can just unscrew them. And I've got my circular saw for cutting up the ply into smaller sections at the end just to make it easier to lift up. All my safety gear, and most importantly, I have mozzie coil, because there are a million mozzies in here and the last thing I want to do is be swatting mozzies when I've got power tools going. So I'm ready to go. Let's get this floor up. So the next thing I'm going to do is remove the floor from this aisle section. Now, originally I wasn't going to do that because the floor in the aisle does feel pretty solid, and given that the rest of the frame, especially in the center of the bus, is in really good condition, I'm not really expecting there to be any major issues with rust or anything in the frame underneath. And if I was just going to put the floor down straight over the top of it, honestly, I would just leave that aisle as it is. But that's actually quite a large area of potentially usable space. The sunken part of the aisle is a bit over 4 meters long, and it's about 1/2 meter wide. I'm actually thinking that I might rig up some sort of water tank storage in this area. I can probably get at least 300 litres, possibly even more, of water storage here, and it's right in the middle of the bus, so it's nicely centered for weight distribution. And if I can do that, it means that the tanks that I put in the bins underneath the floor can be a lot smaller, so I save a lot of space. So I haven't fully decided that that's what I'm going to do, but I want to be able to take the floor up so I can have a good look at how the frame is structured underneath and work out if the best way to use that storage space. So this is a classic example of why it is actually a good idea to take up the floor in the bus. This front step that I'm currently working on seemed pretty solid from the top. I mean, the vinyl was obviously old and a bit grotty, but you know, there was nothing to suggest that there was any issues with the floor. But you know, I'm trying to rip up the vinyl in this corner, and you can see here this sort of, well, I hope you can see on the camera, this sort of pale salmony pink stuff is not actually wood. It's like bog. It's the same sort of stuff, plastery sort of stuff that they had up the aisle, and there's a ton of it in here. So you know, this has obviously been put down to level the floor, and there was actually a newer piece of vinyl here that was a different color. Actually, you can see it's on the other side as well, so I suspect I'm going to have this issue over there as well. But so, you know, there's been a lot of this bog stuff put down in here, presumably to fill a hollow, and you can tell here the wood is underneath is actually rotted, and instead of pulling it up and replacing it, someone's previous owner has just filled it all in with bog and stuck another bit of vinyl over the top. If I hadn't attempted to pull that up and see what's underneath, I would never have found that, and you know, in a couple of years that would just be completely disgusting. Removing the floor of the bus was by far the hardest part of this whole conversion so far. It took me a good solid couple of weeks to get all the floor up. I just couldn't believe how well it was stuck down. Even after 30 years, the glue was still super strong. But anyway, I got there in the end. And even though in the beginning I really hesitated as to whether it was even worth going to the effort to pull up the floor, I'm really glad that I did in the end, because there were sections of the floor that were rotten and needed to be replaced. And I did find a few patches of rust in the frame as well. Now, thankfully, it was all just surface rust, and most of the frame, especially in the center of the bus, is in excellent condition. So that was reassuring, and I'm glad that I found those other patches of rust, because now it means I can get in and treat them and prevent them from getting any worse in the future. And also, ripping up the floor gave me a much better understanding of how the frame of the bus is structured and how it's all put together. And also I got a really good view of all the mechanics underneath the bus. So I feel like I've got a bit more of an understanding of how the bus is built. I've still got a little bit of work to do now to clean up the frame. I've got to scrape off all the remnants of the glue and little bits of wood that are still stuck to the frame, give it all a really good clean, because then I want to go around and treat those rust areas before I lay the new floor. So that's the next task, but the hardest part is done, so I'm looking forward to getting it all cleaned up and getting the new floor in.